Nails buffed and polished, tucked in elbows, pockets, designer bags, teacup and saucer, strutting or stuffed in strollers, coiffed and printed, matching bows and collars, smirking, grinning. So, do you have any idea who or what this is about? Well, don't go away, because my first guest is going to tell us, and much more. This is The Right Stuff. The poetic words I've just read were written by a local poet, and I'm so delighted to introduce her to you. Dorothy Mahoney is a retired teacher who lives in Windsor. She's the author of 2 poetry collections, Through Painted Skies and Returning to the Point. Her poetry has been included in numerous anthologies, most recently appearing in Detours, an anthology of poets from Windsor and Essex County. Palimpsest Press has just released her newest book, Off Leash. We'll meet the publisher of Palimpsest Press later in the show. But first, Dorothy Mahoney. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, let's talk about Off Leash, because I'd like to learn more about you, and we'll do that in a little while. But the viewers may know by now, based on what I read at the top of the show, and the name of your book, Off Leash, what we're talking about. But why don't you tell us about Off Leash?
Okay, well, it's a collection of dog poems, and it started when my husband got a sheepdog. All his life he wanted a dog, and so it wasn't until much later, after we were married and we had our children, that he got to his wish. So it was at that point that I started to chronicle the goings-on, because we got the dog in the summer, so it was kind of a dog summer. And if you ever owned a dog, you know how much work a puppy is.
You have to be a lunatic to have a puppy.
It's very much like having a child. You have to train it, and you have to go outside with it a lot, and so you have to be home with it when you first get it. So as a teacher, that was perfect, because I was home for the summer, so it was a dog summer.
Yeah, because I was going to say to you, why dogs? Why not cats or gerbils?
They would make great books too. Absolutely.
So when you wrote this book, did you write, are the poems mostly about your observations, or is some of it from imagination?
Well, some of it is. It started in 2004 when we got our first dog, and then we now are on our 3rd dog. So it's funny, because everybody has a dog story. So we would take the dog for a walk, and you meet other dog owners, and you meet their dogs, and so before you know it, you've got all kinds of things. And from there, it just kind of grew. So then it was the what if. So what if Noah had one dog and then had to get another dog? And what if, from biblical characters to dogs in paintings and Hollywood dogs, and it just escalated. So I was really lucky when I saw Amy, because she said, what about that dog manuscript? And I said, oh gosh, it's still in a drawer. So it came to the point where it was just time to stop writing about dogs. So yeah, I was very happy with the book. I just saw the printer's copy this past week, so I'm delighted.
It is. It's. No, is this the real dog?
No, no, it's not. It's not. It's well, there are some pretty dark dog stories in there. So it's actually Dawn told me it's a photo from an Indian in India, a dog roundup of strays. So I was a little sad about that, but she said they all went to good homes. So I believe her.
Yes, I've been in India, and I've seen the stray dogs on the streets.
Yes.
So did you have just one dog throughout this?
We're on our 3rd.
Yeah, even while this, you were writing this?
Well, the
Yeah.
unfortunate part was that the dog of his dreams died
Oh.
and when it was 5, and so then we got another dog, and then he turned into a biter. And so, yeah, all the issues with dogs are in that book,
Yeah.
pretty much. Yeah.
What parallels do you see when you write about dogs, or writing about humans? Do you see a lot of characteristics?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think that's part of the darker side of the book, certainly, the issues of abuse. And there was one dog I met when I was at the Goodwill bookstore, Ella, and there's a poem about her in there. And there's one line about, you can tell so much about people by the way they handle their books. And it's like that, of course, with how you handle dogs, how you handle relationships, how you handle anything. So the dogs do become a metaphor for other things.
And do you find, because you must have talked to an awful lot of dog owners, and everybody says, oh, the dog starts to look like its owner.
Yes. Oh, well, you should see my husband because he does have very iconic eyebrows. And if you know sheepdogs, and if you saw the two of them next to each other, it's very true.
Have you seen some really ugly dogs?
I think I have to say no comment on that.
Do you have a favorite poem out of this? I know I'm going to get you to read one from one of your other books.
Oh, okay.
But can you remember anything in here? I kind of like this one, After Work. Do you remember After Work?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lots of people would identify with this. Would you mind?
No, sure. After Work. A dog knows your leather, heel rubbing shoe into submission, forcing form no one else can slip into or fill the same way. How one hand in a glove is not the equal of his master's, how hide softens, scrapes, scuffs, pales at the seam, becomes the familiar tread, the known touch. A dog anticipates the step on the porch, key in the lock, the mincing as he hunches around the kitchen, his heart on, proclaiming his joy as you enter, shedding shoes and gloves, the form of you he longs for, that well-worn touch. That actually came from a workshop where Patrick Lane wanted everyone to write erotic poems, and I was so in dog mind. I kept thinking about our dog, and of course, whenever we came home, he just got overly excited to that point where it was embarrassing and a little difficult to explain to other people, but I mean, it was just his innocence and his joy. So if it sounds really erotic, it's, I guess maybe it is if you're another dog.
Yeah. As you talk about that, and I go back to those parallels with humans. And I read a book one time, How to Train Your Husband, but it was all about how to train your dog.
Oh.
So I guess this doggy metaphor goes through everything.
Quite possibly, yeah. I guess it depends on what you're wearing when your husband comes home from work.
Did you have fun writing this?
I did. I really did. And I've met so many people and so many dogs, and it has been a lot of fun. Yeah, a lot of fun.
Now, you have so many other books. You've been really prolific.
Oh, well, because I was teaching English, I always like to write with my students, and so I was always writing. And so it was just natural. And I think, too, if you're going to teach writing, you should have some experience with it so that you can understand when people have difficulty with writing, you've been through that. So, yeah.
Returning to the point, tell me about returning to the point.
It's funny because at one time when I was at the university, years and years ago, W.O. Mitchell was the writer in residence then, and he said, your very first book will be autobiographical. And my first book wasn't, but in a way, this really should have been my first book because I had written a lot of those poems, and a lot of them are autobiographical. I was lucky too, the cover is my sister and my father, who's passed away long ago, so they're actually at Point Pelee.
They're on the boardwalk.
Yes, and I took that photo when I was in grade 8 with a really crappy camera, but I've always loved that photo because personally it speaks a lot to me.
But you may have thought it was a crappy photo, but it actually is perfect for this book.
Yes.
And I don't know if our viewers can see it, but it has that almost sepia look and almost like a memory look.
Yes.
It's really, really fabulous. Now tell me about, you've got a wonderful poem here called Locked Out. Tell me what that's about.
Well, that's the problem when you're a writer, right? You end up borrowing things from your real life. So that actually happened. Our older son was locked out of the house. And that's what happens. You end up writing about, and sometimes you disguise it thinly and other times you don't. And so really, I guess I had to kind of apologize to my kids whenever I wrote about them. That's what happens. But not all of them are about my family.
Putting the cat down, a cat story.
Yes, we've always had cats, and yes, if you've ever owned pets, you know how difficult that is. Yes.
And I think anyone who has had to put a pet down would so identify with the tone and the heart that you've put in here. There was another one. Of course, there were so many. I mean, I could say to you, "Oh, read a bit of this and read a bit of that."
Oh, that's very kind of you.
Alarm. Is that the ubiquitous alarm that drives everybody insane in the morning?
I think that's partially the alarm of going to work and leaving your kids and thinking, "Oh, I hope they're not getting into anything they shouldn't." And the alarm that you build up inside yourself as you think of all the possibilities.
Would you like to read it?
Oh, sure. Thank you. Alarm. These mornings I have no time to wander through the yard, racing with coffee cup to the car. I see the rose on the arbor has bloomed. I'm ready to back down the driveway, see the pattern of holes in the hostas. Again, we have slugs, but now I watch for passing cars. I drive by the house and the hedge needs pruning. 3 crows on the roof chide me, the grass has grown long. Before the turn at the intersection, my garden is less than a mile away. I've forgiven the drooping peonies, the feverfew gone to seed. I am hoping my sons have risen and that I can control all that grows in this day.
Dorothy, those are wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
So, as usual, time gets away from us, and we could just sort of talk for another hour, but where can people get your books?
Well, they can go to the Palimpsest website, and they can also go to Amazon, or if they don't like to use the computer, they could always go to bookstores like Biblioasis or Indigo or Chapters or anywhere where good books are sold.
That's terrific. Thank you so much
Thank
for being
you.
my guest.